Welcome to Season 3 of This Is Your Life in Silicon Valley, a podcast about the Bay Area, technology, and culture. I'm your host, Sunil Rajaraman, and I'm joined by my co-host, Yasha Kakis-Wolf. This Is Your Life in Silicon Valley is brought to you by The Bold Italic.
I was a little nervous today.
Well, I had a little bit of experience because 2 years ago, for context, I wrote some satire, as you know, for The Bold Italic, and Swisher tweeted to me.
Yeah, it's like the namesake of our podcast.
And Recode, Decode hosted me, and I got to sit in the red chair. And today, we had Kara in our tiny little broom closet.
Yeah. A cool conversation, too. Like, you start to feel the importance of the relationship between tech and politics. And that's not a direction that I thought we would end up going.
No, and Kara is really doing some amazing work in technology journalism, and one of the few people that is just not afraid of holding tech accountable and asking the right questions.
And the hard questions. Enjoy.
I think we're rolling.
Awesome. Are you a San Francisco native?
No.
Did you ever expect to grow up or spend time in San Francisco?
My children are, but no.
Yeah.
I like San Francisco. I always liked San Francisco.
Where'd you grow up?
In lots of places.
Where do you think about as home before San Francisco?
Nowhere. Lots of places. I grew up I was born in Philadelphia. We moved to New Jersey briefly, then to New York, to near Roslyn Harbor. It's a town in the North Shore of Long Island. And then my dad died, and we then moved to Princeton, New Jersey. And I was there through high school, essentially from 5th grade to high school. And then Washington, and then...
Do you feel like you have to be here right now? Is that why?
In San Francisco?
Yeah.
Well, I've been here for 20 years. I mean, since the mid-90s.
Right.
I moved here right at the beginning of the internet age. And now I'm actually splitting my time between San Francisco and D.C. because my kids are growing up in D.C. now.
Yeah.
So I'm half and half now.
But right?
D.C. and San Francisco are the two places I've lived the longest. And so that's where I'm living now.
So just splitting that time between the two, that feels right. That's the right way to do it.
Bi-coastal. And I'm dating someone in New York, so I'm tri-coastal, I guess. So.
Do you like it here?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And, what do you say to people who say the city is in decline?
It is.
Oh, tell us about that. Why is it in decline?
Well, it actually is funny. Last night, I walk everywhere in San Francisco. I walk a ton. And so I've noticed the change has been so drastic, including people living on the streets. And there was someone in a tent on my street last night, and I never had seen that. Like, it was, it's in the Castro. It's not like a fancy neighborhood. But I had never seen a full tent on the street in this particular neighborhood. You see them now along Folsom and everything else, and it just was sort of like, oh God, people should not be living on tents on the streets.
Why has the decline accelerated? As we're in this unprecedented
year and a half. It seems like it. I mean, this morning I was working out and I walked home, and every single storefront had someone sleeping in it, which just wasn't happening before. And it just wasn't. I don't know why. I just noticed and then when you contrast it to being in another city where that's not happening, like D.C. or even New York, it's really, for various reasons, it's freezing cold there. It's a different weather pattern and stuff. But it's really the shift has been dramatic, including the filth on the streets, the trash, the sort of the general sort of trashing of San Francisco.
Did that influence the reason that you moved your children to D.C.?
No. I got a divorce, and my ex became the CTO of America. So no, it had nothing to do with trash.
Yeah.
She was working for Obama, and it was a really exciting opportunity for her. And the kids, we decided the kids might have a really fun adventure, and they ended up liking D.C., and they liked their high school. And if you have teenagers, it's not easy to move them around very easily.
I do, and we moved ours once too many times.
Yeah, so they don't like it. And so they asked to stay there, and I just make the accommodation for them. And I like D.C. I have a lot of friends there, so it's not that big a deal. Yeah.
Do you think that there's any company or any organization in particular that's been destructive to San Francisco?
Gosh, I mean, I think housing is at the heart of everything, right? The lack of housing, the lack of affordable housing for people, all of the internet companies bringing up the prices, but that happens in every major city.
Mm-hmm.
It happens in all this. You go to Brooklyn or you go to, I go to lots of different places. The same story. It's that, there's a lot of people want to live in one certain area of these major cities, and the prices go up, and they just happen to go up really high here, and there's limited capacity here for building, and then there's all the NIMBY people and the lack of density housing. There's just a great story in either the Chronicle or the New York Times about how it took 10 years to build this one group of affordable housing. It's insane that they don't build housing here.
So do you think you'll still be here in a decade from now?
I don't know. I mean, I cover tech, so it's hard not to, right? So I have to be here, and you have to know the people here who live here and work here. And I spent a lot of time on the peninsula too. I'm going down there this afternoon. So
are you interviewing for a VC job?
Yeah, right. Never. You'll never. If you see me take a VC job, you have to find me and hit me with a very large mallet, if you don't mind. No, I'm going down to Xerox Park. I think it's just called Park now, to do a forum on the ethics of AI with the guy who runs the park right now. So.
As somebody that's bi-coastal, are you feeling any movement of any of the people that you feel like you need to be a part of for the business that you're in moving to the East Coast?
No, not at all.
It's not at all.
No, what's interesting is being in D.C., there's a lot of regulation going on. So I'm spending a lot of time visiting senators, and I see a lot of CEOs in D.C. Oddly enough, they're always there visiting. And so I saw Jamie Dimon recently, the head of Walmart. And I like talking to them because we talk about tech issues a lot. And then obviously all the senators. I'm going to go see Senator Michael Bennet soon. I've spent a lot of time with Senator Warner. I just was hanging out with Senator Hassan. I mean, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to see, Senator Wyden and stuff. So they've been on my podcast quite a bit.
Yeah, and I've noticed this. You're becoming more of this. You're at the intersection of tech and politics. You were retweeted by Donald Trump,
yeah,
right? Recently.
Yeah, I was.
What was that experience like?
Thankfully he didn't use my name, so it was fine. So the trolls. It was not a nice. It was an interview I did with Hillary Clinton. It was an event at the 92nd Street Y in New York, and then we made it a podcast. We make everything a podcast, pretty much. And so there was a back and forth. I got the name of someone wrong, and it was two African American men, and she said, "Oh, they all look alike." She was making a joke, which wasn't. People took the wrong way, and then he retweeted it, and I don't know.
It's amazing how this narrative can just take shape on Twitter without proper context if you don't enter the conversation.
I guess. Everyone knows he's a liar. He's like a persistent and conspicuous liar. So I don't think most of things he says, most people don't.
See, now and I spent some time with Governor Jay Inslee, who seems like he's very well educated about the way the technology industry and the internet are having a kind of impact into his world. But it doesn't feel like that's the case with the majority of our elected officials.
No, they're idiots. I mean, just watch the Google hearings. I mean, they had Sundar Pichai there yesterday, and the questions were so stupid. It was like, there's some very serious questions to ask Google about search in China and all kinds of things, and they just go down to the lowest common denominator of stupidity, and as exemplified by King, whatever his name is.
Oh my gosh, that was awful.
He's just, I just don't want to make fun of him, but he just doesn't know, like, why even have him there? Why even fly Sundar out there if you don't want to ask? It just was just a ridiculous. All those hearings were circuses as far as I can tell.
Is there anything that happened that were not in those particular hearings that you think was important? Or the stories about? It was just
I watched
go there for the circus.
I was trying to find a column, and I was like, "There's nothing to say here, but except that Congress people are stupid, like that they don't understand what's happening." Now, I'm hoping that the people who are regulators do have some, we're thinking about really important things like federal privacy regulation. That would be nice, or thinking about political advertising, transparency, and things like that. And that's what Senator Klobuchar, Senator Warner. They're very intelligent, and the people that work for them are very intelligent. And so I think it's a question of how you come up with the right legislation and how to prevent the wrong legislation or legislations that gets hijacked by these Facebooks and Googles of the world.
So let's talk about Facebook for a second. You recently wrote a pretty good column on Sheryl Sandberg. I thought it was very good. Do you think Mark Zuckerberg should be replaced as CEO of Facebook?
He won't be. It doesn't matter. It's like saying, do you think air should not exist? He doesn't. There's no replacing him. He's unkillable. Which
hypothetically, if that were to happen,
but it can't. So it can't. Like, it doesn't. Hypothetically, sure. I don't think he's up to the task. I've said that many times publicly. I think it's a job that requires an enormous. Wise person to be running this. I don't even think a person is really capable of running that company at this point with all the different global problems. It's very different from India and Myanmar to Colombia to the United States to Europe. I mean, there's so many questions. I don't think any one person can really understand this. And the way they built the product makes it almost impossible.
Who are the person or persons that he should have on his team that could help?
I don't know. He's had the same people for 10 years. Right. I mean, I've always had a problem with that. They're always very interested in talking about their cohesion. Like, we all get along so well over 10 years. And I'm like, is that such a good thing? That's not such a good thing. And it's also the same, tight group of people. And I understand why he has that. He's got incoming all the time. And He wants to be around people he trusts, but he's responsible for such a big swath of humanity that it's really, and he's unelected, and it's just an interesting question of like, is there someone who could actually run this place?
How would you respond to people who look at Times coverage and say, oh well, the New York Times coverage of Facebook is of course negative because there's an incentive to break up?
Oh, for goodness sake. It's ridiculous.
What would you say to those people?
They're stupid. I'm sorry. I don't run the New York Times. I just write I'm a contributor to them, so I don't work for the New York Times also. So I can say that this is someone on the outside. I don't, I write a column for them every week. That's it. And I don't. They're not my employer. My employer is Vox Media. It's just that's not why people do things. I think we can be accused of, the press in general, not the New York Times in particular, is not understanding, say, the online advertising market, or not understanding some of the technology, and sort of painting a very broad brush over the industry. That said, directionally, everything that's been written about these companies is correct. Directionally, they overstep. Directionally, they don't have any responsibility for the things they're doing. Directionally, they've abrogated responsibility while they're collecting all the money. They're thoughtless in the creation. And you don't need, there's 20 instances around the world where they have been sloppy, Facebook, for example. And so I think they can point to tiny little mistakes, or maybe this was a little too focused on this, and this maybe happened like this. But that's what they do. They point to the tiny mistakes. Broader, the thematic things being put forth by the New York Times, by myself and by many others, are absolutely correct, is that tech has done damage to society, and now what?
Yeah. And do you think federal regulation is a path that we should be going collectively?
I think it's natural. It's just the thing that happened with Microsoft. It happens with everybody, AT&T. And actually, someone was pointing out to me when AT&T got pulled apart, which was a great, people were against that, if you remember. 1,000 flowers bloomed, kind of, not to use a communist phrase, but it created a lot of innovation. The same thing after Microsoft got pushed down a few pegs, Google. So I don't think it's such a bad thing to have these larger companies brought to heel a little bit, and they have unlimited power at this point.
You've had hundreds of CEOs in your chair. Mm-hmm. What is going on with the mercurial CEO? Why is that so in vogue? You got Elon Musk.
Yeah, I don't know. Elon's his own singular sensation. I don't know Elon's Elon. So I think, who else is a mercurial CEO?
Yeah, you got Zuckerberg.
He's not mercurial. He's dull.
Okay, dull. Okay. You got Jack. I guess
he's not mercurial. He's just odd. They're just weird people.
Sure.
Well, it's interesting because these people are the founders. I bet Thomas Edison was weird. I bet Henry Ford was weird. He was weird. You go back and look at historical stuff around them. Most of these people who are founders and inventors and entrepreneurs are weird people to start with, and then they get in positions of power. I knew Jeff Bezos before he was a billionaire, and he was weird then, and he's weird now. He had his things, he had his quirks, and now they're writ larger.
Who's the most difficult to cover out of that bunch?
They're none of them. I don't think any. Bezos, I guess. He knows, because he's an adult, he knows his way around a press person. So, difficult.
Does it just mean he's more cautious?
Yeah, he's smart. He's an adult. He doesn't feel the need to tell you everything, which I like a person who feels the need to tell you everything. He's not that insecure. So he can't take advantage of that.
So someone were to give you $100 to put in the stock market on one of the FANG stocks, which one do you bet on?
Amazon.
Amazon. Why?
Because he's brilliant. I think he's brilliant. I'm sorry. I think the things he does are really smart. I think if I would have pick a criticism of them, I think he's got a very tight group of people too that he needs to freshen up. I think ultimately, but I think he's very carefully trod slowly and carefully into lots of markets. I think he's very thoughtful. I don't think it's a hair on fire company. And Apple probably, although they have issues around innovation, like what's the next innovative thing. But Tim Cook, they have a very well-oiled machine over there and very mature executives. And that's a positive and a negative. Where does innovation come from? That's my big theme for 2019.
What about 2019?
Where does it come from?
Where is innovation going to come from? Where's the next innovation going to come from? I'm done with ethics. I'm not done with ethics, but that was my big thing, is tech responsibility and ethics.
Sure.
And that's still a really important thing. But I think the question is, how do we create innovation amid all this complexity?
Yeah.
Well, you don't think it's scooters? You don't?
I love scooters. Don't insult scooters.
You love scooters?
I love scooters.
What? Why do you love scooters?
Because they're fun. Have you ridden on one?
No, I'm afraid I'm going to fall down.
Well, don't worry. Well, you're kind of tall, right? You're center of gravity. I'm good with scooters. I'm tiny, so I look like a little troll. But I like them. They get me from place to place, and I like them, and I wear a helmet.
Do you think those are multi-billion-dollar companies?
I don't know. They're fun. They're useful. They're I don't know.
When you become a VC, you're going to invest in lots of scooter
companies. No. I don't think they're small company. I think people use them a lot. I see people using them a lot. I use them a lot. So I go by what I use. Like, I find them useful. So they're there. I ride instead of walking. I walk a lot. It just depends if I'm late, pretty much. So I like them. Are you worried about getting in trouble? Is that what you're worried about?
Worried about
a scooter?
On a scooter, so I can't look. If I'm going to pay for transportation, I want that shit to take me from point A to point B.
Car.
I don't want to have to think about it.
Right.
Like anything
like the wind in your hair.
He also doesn't like fun. Like he's straight up.
I
I don't want fun.
riding through Georgetown the other day. It was a beautiful day. The fall leaves were falling. It was nice. I was going to meet someone. A friend of mine David Gregory has a course there, and I rode a scooter there. It was very lovely.
If 2018 is all about ethics and responsibility in tech, is it like a hard line for you? Like, I got to think about innovation?
I'm innovation. I'm just like wondering I was like, where's the next? Someone was like, what's the hot company? I was like, I don't know. Like scooters, right? That's it. Like, that's all you can come up with. There's like, where is it? Is it like, where's the next interesting innovation happening? Right. And I think tech may be a little tired right now.
Mm-hmm. And what's on your radar? I mean, like, what are your stories that you can, that you're thinking? I mean, you don't want to tip your hand to other publications out there, but what are some things that you're thinking about?
Obviously political. With Trump everything is political now, and like what happens with politics is, I think, the center. Washington's become the center again. Like, he has pulled everybody into Washington, even though he's trying to get everyone out of the swamp. People are precisely interested because they're precisely interested in him and all the things he's doing. I think where innovation is coming from and the competition around the globe, I think I'm really interested in the challenges from China, from India, and from Israel, and how U.S. tech remains innovative, I think is interesting. I think jobs are always like, where do jobs go? Where's the real impact from jobs and education on by tech, with the impact of tech on jobs and education and things.
If Trump says he would join your podcast and he would just do no holds barred interview, would you have him on?
Of course.
And what would you ask him?
Why is that even a question? Of course. I've actually tweeted at him saying, please come on my podcast. I'm much nicer than Jim Acosta, I think, or something like that. So.
Top couple things you would ask him, or subjects you would press him on. What would they be?
Twitter. I want to be a tech. You'd have to be tech oriented for me. Like, obviously, there's so many things. Like, where do you start? Why is it? Why do you lie so much? Like, what is the thinking? Like,
why does no one ask him that? Like,
I don't know. I would ask him directly. I'm like, you lie a lot. Like, tell me about it. Like, because you do it. Like, you got to be aware. Are you not aware of it? Or are you just like, would you lie to yourself? I would work on lies for a long time because I'm really interested in that. And then I think, why do you want to do this? Why is he going to remain president? How does his day go? Like, what does he do all day?
Right.
Like, people say what he does all day. I want him to tell me what he does all day.
Confirm that you're in your bedroom for
watching
6
TV.
hours watching TV.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
I think he's watching. But I want to know, are you watching TV? I asked that of Steve Jobs once. Like, what do you do all day? Everyone's like, oh, I can't believe you asked him
What
that.
do you do all day? Because it seems like you're up 24 hours a day.
I'm busy.
And it doesn't seem possible. Like, describe, can you just give us...
I'll go through a schedule.
Okay, yeah.
Right,
yeah, like, what time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up?
I gotta get up early. Let me think. I travel a lot, so let me give you a day. This is a day that drove someone I know crazy. Someone I'm dating crazy. They're like, "What do you do more in a day than I do in 20 years?" So let me find a good day. Let's find a good day. Here's one. Okay, Okay, the other day. So I took a night flight. I took an overnight a flight to. I was in New York, and I had lunch with Maggie Haberman, who's a friend of mine, who I like, and we were talking about
her work.
Speaking of someone who works all the time, who then had like 3 stories like an hour after we left lunch, which was incredible. But then I flew to New York on Monday, from New York to here on an early, like 5 a.m. flight.
But on the plane, what are you doing on the plane?
I was working. I was returning emails, stuff like that, things like that. Just returning emails, working, thinking up story ideas, responding to readers and stuff like that. And then I got here and I did I worked out, which I always try to work out every day.
Soul Cycle or
something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Soul Cycle, things like that. And then I did an event with Ezra Klein at Manny's, this new event space in San Francisco at 16th and Valencia, which is amazing. And so I'm
going there tonight.
Yeah, it's great. They do podcast. We did podcasts from there, and they do live events. It's a wonderful new venue. And then I went out to dinner with Ezra and the guy from Sleeping Giant, who was the one that pushed Bannon off, in trouble for Breitbart. He wanted some advice on some things he's doing. So
Which restaurant did you go to? Can you share?
Just nearby, Sunflower.
Okay.
And then the next day, and then I woke up the next day and did 1, 2, 3 podcast. Let's see what I woke up the next morning very early, had a call with a sponsor, who was one of our sponsors, and about an event I'm going to do with them. And then I had breakfast with a sponsor down in Silicon Valley. So I drove down to Silicon Valley, and on the drive down, I did a bunch of calls on the drive, because there was tons of traffic. I got there, had breakfast with the CEO of this company, who's one of our sponsors, and we were talking about some events. We're going to do some live events on AI in D.C., talking to policymakers. And so we don't let sponsors decide any of our content, but we were just talking about it. And it was a nice get to meet you, thank you for the money, sponsors kind of breakfast. And then I came back, and I had been flying from New York to L.A., and then to San Francisco to interview Peter Jackson in person, but then he had to move the time, and I could. So then when I get to LA, I got on a plane here faster because I had to get to this Ezra Klein thing, and so I ended up doing a podcast with Peter Jackson, who's done this amazing movie. He's the director of the Hobbit movies, obviously, and everything else. But he's done this movie. He colorized all this World War I footage and made a movie out of it. It's astonishing. So I had seen it in New York over the weekend, and we did an hour-long podcast about that. It was remote. I don't usually do remote podcasts, but then we ended up doing it. And then I did 3 more podcasts, one with the DoorDash CEO, one with a guy from Australia in 99.
I'm exhausted.
And then we had our Vox holiday party, and then I had another event.
But okay, so how do you do
and then I
wrote the Twitter, like, because you're super engaging on Twitter, you follow, like, where is that just like, okay, I've got 15 seconds, I'm just going to tweet something, I'm going to tweet something.
Yeah, I do it in the morning and stuff like that. I respond. I take minutes when I'm driving somewhere, not driving in a car. When I'm being driven. I tend to, just when I'm sitting, I suppose I'll do that. I do that because I think it's really good to respond to readers, you know what I mean? Like, and I get ideas on Twitter, and I put out, I'm thinking of doing, I had finished a column last week about China, and now I'm thinking about the Saudis this week for some reason. I don't know if it's going to end up, I'm writing it tonight. I'll write the column tonight on the plane to New York. I'm going to a plane to New York, so I'll write the column tonight. It's actually due last night, but I ended up taking my staff out.
So even great writers miss deadlines every now and then.
Well, it doesn't really matter when my column, you know what I mean? I don't think the New York Times is like waiting. Karen Swisher, when are you filing immediately? No, I mean, these are I want to do the best column I can. So I'm contemplating an Uber column about them having an IPO. I had been in Las Vegas last week with Dara Khosrowshahi. I had him on stage at an event, so we talked a little bit about their IPO and stuff.
Uber or Lyft in the public market, assuming valuation is equal.
Lyft first.
Yeah.
Then Uber. Yeah, they're both going out.
Or I'm sorry, who would you bet on, Uber or Lyft, to deliver more returns long run?
I don't know. I think it's tough businesses, right?
Yeah, those are tough businesses.
They have to merge, right? Don't they? I mean,
at some point.
No, at some point, right? They've got to split up the world, and that's it, right?
Did you vote in the last San Francisco mayoral election?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who'd you vote for?
London Breed.
Yeah. And
yes, I did.
Have you had a chance to spend time with her?
No, but I'm getting her on the podcast. I would really like to talk to her about what she's doing. She's trying, obviously. This is a really tough city to deal with.
Yeah.
And to move these tech executives. I just did a really long podcast with an NBC show with Mark Benioff, who is the CEO of Salesforce. We did it at the top of Salesforce Tower, and we talked a lot about politics. I'm going to take off my coat because it's hot in here.
Yeah.
Hot in here.
Oh, my gosh. Hey, what do you think of his scarf?
It's very fetching.
Thank you. He's been making fun of me all morning.
Why? It's fetching. It's well done.
He's my fashion. Yasha's my fashion icon.
You're wearing you're dressed like a lesbian.
I am.
Wearing
I was going for lumberjack.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, in San Francisco, that's lesbian. Just so you know.
Okay. Well.
All right. Okay.
Next life.
All right.
I am Hindu.
It's nice. It's a nice shirt.
Yeah, it's a nice shirt.
You don't see plaid much.
You don't see plaid
Beyond
much.
The bedroom.
It's the holidays. He's pulling it out.
Beyond the bedroom pajama, you don't see a plaid like that. Right?
Okay, you know what? This is not going how I planned, and I'm not sure I like it. But that's all right. Yeah. Who does someone like you turn to for advice? I've always wondered about that. You're at the top of your profession.
Nobody.
You got no one.
No, I'm kidding. Of course I do.
Is there like a mentor or somebody you reach out to?
Walt Mossberg was for many years. You know, he and I did the Code conference, the Code and All Things D before. So Walt was a very early mentor. But it was interesting because I don't have as many people that I talk to as I used to. I do talk to Jim Bankoff, who's the CEO of Vox, and he and I are very good friends too. And we're constantly talking about things and where things are going. And Melissa Bell, who's the publisher of Vox, and we tend to talk a lot about things. But for mentorship, not a lot of people. Maggie Haberman, someone like that, or other top reporter. Like I'm friends with a lot of reporters who are well known, I think, in their fields and stuff like that. And so I sometimes call people for lunch and say, "Would you like to have lunch?" Or even anyone I get. My kids give me really good advice, and they're like, "Mom, that's not cool," or like something like that. So, but in general,
do your kids tell you that the things you do are cool?
Some
also?
of them, yeah. They're pretty honest. They're great. I've had my oldest son on the podcast quite a lot because he's really good, actually, and those really score really well, if you can believe it. They
do they know that you're
yes.
famous?
Yeah.
And how do they handle that?
They make fun of it.
Huh.
Completely. I'm famous, like a weird famous, like famous among geeky people. It's like it's not really. Although interestingly, with the podcast, it's become different. Like there's a lot of young women. Like I did this thing on Slate that people seem to like, where I insulted like everyone I've ever worked for. So it's interesting because as we take the podcast out to a broader audience, like we do a Hillary Clinton, or we do, I'm dying to do Chrissy Teigen, for example. Like as we like,
so are we.
Yeah.
Like honestly, it's just so much fun
she's
publicly.
Really
like
funny, yeah.
we want to have her
like
on.
I want to do a podcast to talk to her. As we sort of make, as we do more political people, as we do more celebrity type, not celebrity, I don't want to say that, just like Hollywood kind of people. There's a larger audience, and since doing the Times thing, it's a broader audience versus just the tech people. You do get noticed a lot, which is interesting. My kids could care less.
Do you like podcasting more than writing?
I do.
Yeah.
I know. Yes. Yes, I do like writing for the New York Times because the impact is really rather broader. Like I could write the same thing on Recode, and I think we've done great work on Recode, but like the exact same thing on Recode has a different reverberation than it does in the New York Times.
Yeah.
You're somebody who probably gets a lot of, negative feedback on Twitter for things. No,
nobody ever comes at me on Twitter.
Really? And is that because you
I don't know. Someone the other day was like, "Oh, you must get killed on Twitter." I'm like, I don't. It's always like, "Good job, Kara." Like, I'm sort of like, where are the, every now and then there's someone who's like, "You liberal lesbian from San Francisco." I'm like, yes, that's descriptive. Thank you for that. Like, I'm not particularly liberal. Like, I'm like liberal on some things, not liberal on others. You'd be surprised. But it's never like real good. There's no one that's real good that comes at me on Twitter. It's not, even people who come at me then become pals. Like Scaramucci, he's not my pal, trust me, but you know what I mean. Like he's like, I like attack him, and he attacks me, and then he's like, "Have a drink," and I'm like, "Okay."
Do people find you intimidating?
I think they find me intimidating and then funny.
I'm completely intimidated in this room right now.
Are you?
Yeah. I'm 6'5", and
because I'm going to take you out at the knees.
You'll take me out at the knees. I'm like, I'm sweating.
No, I think people think are surprised. I'm somewhat funny, and I think I don't. I think people are intimidated initially, and then when I don't bite them, they're very pleased by the situation. And I try to be very nice to people in person, so I don't have like an asshole image. I don't think you would find that if you went around. I don't think people would think.
Everybody that says that they know you say that they love you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that you're super funny and kind.
Yes.
But I imagine that the vast majority of people that you interact with, like transactionally, just want something from you, and that's got to be super painful.
Sometimes I think what I think is lost is that people want really. What I said this during this Ezra podcast. I think people want. He's like, "Why do people talk to you?" Someone asked me that on Twitter the other day. Why do people talk to you at all? And I was like, because they like good questions. Like they like good conversations. So I think smart people, of which Silicon Valley is full of smart people, love good questions, and they love good discussions. And I think they talk to me because I ask good questions, and then they end up having a good discussion. And so unless you're a complete insecure, jackass, you're going to like it. Like you're a smart person. You want to have a debate. Like I had a great debate with Sam Altman the other day at a podcast. It was great. Yep. People love that. And we didn't agree on anything. Nothing. Like he's
what's an example of something you disagreed
on? He's happy, shiny future.
Right.
Hey, they don't mean to wreck the world. I'm like, hey, they mean to, But it was more sophisticated than that. And so it was great because we had a great disagreement, but it was well argued. And I think people, and the room was packed and people were really enjoying it. It's because I think people are so tired of this twitchy, stupid culture. And I don't mean, because sometimes on Twitter, it's wonderful. Like, funny memes on Twitter are hysterical. Like, you just laugh. And, like, sometimes you'll see people respond to things about, whatever happened to Michael Cohen or whatever. Some of it's very funny. But I think people are tired of twitchy, thinly thought out things and are very interested in substantive discussions about whatever topic. So I think
maybe we're at the end of TV commentators. Hopefully, maybe the beginning of the end.
Things. I won't go on them. I'm on TV a lot, but I won't go on with those 6-panel. I refuse. Every time they're like a 6-panel, I'm like, no.
You're like, thanks for.
And of course, they're like, everyone wants to be on TV. I'm like, not me, not me on those things.
Sean Hannity asks you to come on a show. Do you go or no?
I don't know about that. I got to tell you, he's such a bag of rage. I just don't want to. I think I'd hit him. I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to hit you right now. I'm just going to have to. And I'm going to be arrested. And it's going to be bad. I feel like I wouldn't be able to not say, you giant fucking asshole. Like, I just don't, and I don't want to. Like, I think he's the one I wouldn't go on a show. You're right. I wouldn't go. Tucker Carlson, that horrible.
Jessica Powell, who we interviewed earlier, was on Tucker Carlson.
Yes, she was. She said he was benign.
Yeah,
he was benign.
I forgot about the entire thing.
Because when you get in their face, they suddenly get polite. They say all this shitty stuff, and then when you leave, but when you're there, they're too scared to actually.
That seems to be the playbook. Then Dennis Herrera we were talking about social media tough guys or two-thumb thugs. Mm-hmm. It's so easy to do it from a distance.
Yes, exactly. So Sean Hannity, I don't think I could go on that. That's an interesting question. I was invited once to Bill O'Reilly, and I was like, I just can't. Life is too freaking short for that jackass.
So you threw out Trump and you threw out Chrissy Teigen. Who's top 3? I wouldn't do
Trump, though. Trump, 100%.
Yeah.
Top 3 on your podcast interview list. You can get anyone. Who are the 3 on your list right now?
That's a good question. Besides Trump and Chrissy Teigen, which is an unusual pairing. Let's think. Who would I love to get? I've interviewed a lot of people, so I'm trying to think of who I haven't gotten to. I think I would really like to talk to Angela Merkel. Mm. I know that sounds crazy. I just think she's has been in a fast. I think Angela Merkel and Theresa May would be really interesting. Yeah. And those are national figures. Obviously, Xi from China. I think that would be a hard interview.
Whoa, right? Yeah.
That would be. I think. Yeah, him. Because of what's going on with all this stuff. Probably. How
about MBS?
If someone asked me that the other day, I don't know. I think he's a thug. I think he's a murderer. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you say? So, you murderer? Like, what's the question?
Yeah.
Did you order the killing? And if he says no, I'd say, I think you're a liar, according to the thing you did. Where do you go? Where does that interview go? That's the thing. No, I don't think I would interview him. He's a murderer. He seems to be a murderer. According to our intelligence agencies, he's a murderer. So I don't know. That's a good question. When I think of interviews, I think, what do you get out of it? What's the yield from it? Like, there's always a good interview with Elon. There's always a good interview with Tim Cook. There's always a good conversation to be had with these people. And so you want to have a conversation. And with Trump, it would be a good conversation. It would be I'd love to meet Michelle Obama. I mean, she'd be fun. I mean, she's been everybody recently because of her book. So that's harder. A lot of them that are harder are the ones that are that have been interviewed a lot. You know what I mean?
Is the practice?
Well, no, it's interesting because, Mark did a ton of interviews, and the only one that really popped up was ours because I got him to say stuff, right? So I don't think it matters because we got him to talk really deeply about the stuff that, a lot of the interviews were a little light as far as I could tell. Didn't really press him on stuff. But I'm trying to think of who else I would interview. That's a good question. God, I've interviewed
while you're noodling on that, I mean, you're one of the very few people who have taken...
when he comes back.
Okay, there we go. Got it.
He's coming back and he's pissed. I'll tell you that.
The South Park Jesus? Sorry.
Remember that? I just saw a bumper sticker that said that Jesus is coming back, and boy, is he pissed. So... happy holidays.
You're one of these few people who take a stand against tech. You have this brand of
not against tech.
Not against tech, but you have who else do you respect in your business that is not just fucking putting out marketing stuff?
Well, I think a lot of I think some of the New York Times stuff has been amazing. Yeah. Shira Frankel did an amazing job, and her band of men were attached to that byline. There was a lot of people I thought were great. They did. Nick Confisoria, a whole bunch of them did a great job. A whole bunch, lots of people were involved. Katie Benner at the Times has done some great work recently. A whole bunch of stuff that she's covering the Justice Department, but recently she's done a bunch of other stuff. I think there's a ton of reporters at the Times that are great, that are doing great work. I think that some of the Atlantic writers are really good. I love Olivia Nuzzi from New York. I mean, I don't write about what she writes about, but I think she's very funny. I love Jessica Presley. Most of them are women. It's interesting. A lot of I think they're doing some of the really great work. there's bunches and bunches of people that are doing good stuff.
Who do you listen to podcast-wise?
I listen to a lot of people. I listen to, it just depends. I listen to Bill Simmons. I listen to people who I think are good. I'm not I listen to people who are good. I listen to Mark Maron. I listen to, I just started listening to the Burn, whatever you call it, slow burn. Stuff like that guy left, right? That guy just left and stuff like that.
Daily Burn? Or
yeah, I listen to Daily. I like him with Barbero. I like Barbero. He's good. Yeah, and I listen to most of the interview shows. I listen to Terry Gross. I listen to she's really good. I listen to really good interviewers a lot of the time, and I really enjoy them. I'm sorry, I thought Alec Baldwin was very good, but apparently his show didn't work out.
How are we doing as interview? Can you give us real-time feedback here?
I'm not going to give you.
How are we doing?
I don't know why I'm interesting to anybody, but okay, fine.
Are we doing a good job? Like, how would you rate us? How would you rate us on a scale of 0 to 100?
I'm not even going to answer that.
Just wait until she's out here and then she can say it on Twitter.
We got to do a 360 review.
No, I'm not going to help you with this. No, you cannot.
I'm going to give you feedback later, Sunil. It'll be fine.
No,
off the air.
Do you like doing podcasts?
I love it.
Do you?
Yeah.
It's fun to chit chat with people, right? People love to talk. I get my inspiration from, there was My Dinner with Andre. Do you remember that movie? That kind of thing. That kind of like a long discussion that's really good is really good. A really bad discussion is really bad.
Yeah.
You don't want a discussion that's like a really boring Brooklyn dinner party, like where you just go into the bathroom and start texting while you're there. I just did that recently. It was such a boring dinner party. I went to the bathroom and started.
I think it's so much fun to do podcasting. It's like here, you don't know us or spend time with us, but we get this little peek into your life, and you get maybe a little bit of peek into who we are.
Dull life that it is.
And that's kind of fun.
Actually, I do not have a dull life. I have a great life.
It sounds like and busy.
Yes, I am. I'm always somewhere with someone interesting. That's what I try to be, is somewhere with someone interesting. Like, I just did a podcast in Los Angeles with Sean Hayes from Will and Grace, who I love, who's become like a pal. Like I really, that was really fun. That was not something, I don't cover that stuff, but he's brilliant. He does a lot of producing. He has some great thoughts on being in Hollywood right now in digital and stuff, and it was just great. It was an unexpectedly good podcast with him, for example. So I often I try really hard to find people that will surprise you. Like I talked about this one podcast a lot, because two podcasts recently that I did a lot that I loved. One was with Nicole Wong, who was the lawyer for Google and Twitter, who was incredibly wise about how we got into this mess. She was there when they were making these policy decisions around what on all kind of content, and she just was. I thought she framed brilliantly the problems they had. I'm going to have her on again because she was so good. And then Jaron Lanier, I had on, who has a book about getting off of social media, but he loves tech. And so someone who loves tech talking smartly about the problems of tech was really, like, he wasn't just some yam just going, tech sucks. Like, you know what I mean? He knows it. He made it. He created it. And he really did begin to talk about, he was talking about social media in particular, was talking about how this is the greatest human experiment on humans in communication in history, and it's failing. And why? Like, he's interested in why. So I love that conversation. I thought that was a great conversation. And then Maria Ressa, who was just on the cover of Time magazine. I interviewed her a month ago. And I had met her at a thing, and I'd known about what Rappler was doing. I was following what Rappler was doing in the Philippines, which is this great journalism, and knew she was in trouble. And she was in the United States, and I said, can you please do an interview with me before you go back, because I think you're going to get arrested. And she did get arrested, because she's been against the homicidal regime that is running the Philippines right now. And so we did this amazing discussion about the impact of Facebook, the impact of social media, the impact of online journalism, those kind of things. Like, what's not to like about my day?
Yeah. Would you ever be a teacher, a professor?
No, I'm terrible.
Really?
I did a master's. So there was the Wojcicki, Esther Wojcicki, who was a journalism professor, who was the mother of Susan Wojcicki, who runs YouTube, and the other Wojcicki was married to Sergey, who also, she runs 23andMe. Mm-hmm. So they had a chair over at Berkeley. There was a week-long master class, and I did it for a week. I brought in all kinds of people to talk to the students, and I gave classes, and I hated teaching. I hate teaching. I'm the worst teacher. I'm like, can't you just figure it out? I did. That kind of thing. I went to Columbia Journalism School, too. I hate teaching. I hate it.
I just wouldn't have caught that. And teaching is so, you have to be so warm and friendly and be able to tell the stories and get people engaged.
Hate it. I'd rather be.
So we won't see Professor Swisher anytime soon.
No.
We'll close out with a couple of questions.
Sure.
First, what's one thing that would surprise people about you that's not widely known?
I'm kind of I would be a very good housewife. I'm a very clean and neat person, and I'm a very good mother. I'm very motherly and with my kids. The house is really clean. Everything is perfect. It's like I keep a nice house. I keep
Roomba or no Roomba?
No Roomba, of course not. No. But I'm just saying, they'd be surprised how much time I spend on my home stuff. Yeah, I would say that. I do. I spend a lot of time with my kids.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised by that after spending the last half hour with you. Appreciate the conversation today. I've had a lot of fun, so thank you for the time. We have one question that we always want to end on.
Sure.
In the networks that you spend your time on, maybe we could say Twitter, is there a person or an organization or something that you'd recommend our listeners to follow and pay attention to?
To follow and pay attention to? I don't know. I have such a wide range of things I pay attention to. You mean on Twitter?
On Twitter. Yeah.
What do I read every day? God, I can't answer that. I have such a wide range of things.
How about a person right now that you're really intrigued with that's on Twitter? You're like, they get it. They're doing a good job.
Chrissy Teigen, of course.
All right, there you go.
I'm sorry. How can you not love her? Every single day she says something funny. You know what I mean? And unusual. She did the whole thing yesterday about the mace. The guy stole the mace in Britain, and she didn't understand it, and she was asking questions, and the whole back and forth between her and all of Britain was hysterical.
I haven't read that yet.
You mean they're like, first the guy took the mace, and then she's like, why did he take the mace, and what happens next? And they're like, well, the lady with the sword stops him. She's like, there's a lady with a sword? The whole thing went back. It just was and they go, yes, the lady with the sword. She goes, what if the lady with the sword doesn't stop him? What happens then? Well, then, they can't make laws. She's like, what? And the whole what, every time she said what was I just was a delight. It was I had an enjoyable, and then I laughed, and it was better than anything else. So
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
No problem.
You were
really
awesome. Thank you.
Chrissy Teigen?
I don't follow her, I have to admit.
I still can't believe that. I just absolutely can't believe it. You are so tuned into everything.
But I don't follow her, but I am somewhat convinced that after this conversation with Kara that we should, or I should, rather.
I'm with you. And I think you got to keep a picture in your head of a mashup between Chrissy Teigen and Angela Merkel.
Well, what I'm left with is just how intense that conversation was and how thankful I am that Kara is reporting on technology.
Yeah, on the front lines. And we appreciate the time that you spent with us today. If you enjoyed this podcast as much as we enjoyed making it, we would appreciate you hopping out to the places that you found our podcast and rating us 5 stars.
Thanks for joining us.